Good evening, and welcome to the March 19th, 2024 Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting. Please note that new business items E through L will be heard at the next meeting on March 26th. So if any of you are here for that, you can go home with a clear conscience. I want to welcome Tom Neese all the way to my left. He is our newest zoning board member.
Thank you.
We are happy to have him. We hope he stays with us. Okay. The first item of business is the approval of the minutes of the February 21st, 2024 meeting.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, are there any changes?
Can I
Okay,
just clarify who that second was?
the second was
that Jody?
Emma. Yeah,
Thank you.
no,
Oh, it was
I
Jody.
thought it was Emma. Was it Jody?
It was Jody.
Sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, thank you. They are,
Abstentions?
I'm abstaining, yes, thank
I'm
you.
abstaining.
Okay. So the first item of business tonight is 413 Lafayette Road. The request of Friends of Lafayette Road in care of Melanie Mertz, owner, for property located at 413 Lafayette Road, whereas relief is needed to construct an attached caretaker's unit to the existing residential care facility, which requires the following. 1, variance from section 10.331 to extend, enlarge, or change the lawful nonconforming use without conforming to the ordinance. And 2, variance from section 10.334 to extend the nonconforming use to a remaining portion of the land. Said property is located on Assessor Map 230 Lot 23A and lies within the single residence district. Before you begin, there is something I want to talk about with the board, if I may, for a minute.
Sure.
Okay. Okay. So these are the planning board comments, and I want you just to consider.
Planning board.
Planning department. I'm so sorry. I keep demoting you. And my other question is, have you all seen the change to this application that was mailed out earlier in the week?
Yes, I have.
All right. The applicant is requesting to construct a 635 square foot addition to the existing structure that will serve as an on-property caretaking unit. It should be noted that the existing property is a group living facility and the number of bedrooms does not reflect the number of independent living units. In reviewing the application, staff found that the following errors need to be corrected on the site plan provided. Boundary line along entry driveway should have a front yard setback, as it is the secondary front yard. The zoning summary table does not match any of the setbacks shown on the plan. All dimensions in the provided column should reflect the distance from the boundary line to the closest point of the existing or proposed structure and have a corresponding call-out on the plan. The initial request from the applicant was to construct a 600 square foot addition. The applicant has not provided an explanation for this change, and updated floor plans and elevations were not submitted. Without this information, and along with the corrections to the site plan, staff believes there is not enough information for the board to make an informed decision. Staff have determined that this application is incomplete and recommend postponing until a time when these documents can be provided. I am reading this so that you can tell me what you think about this.
I would like to make a motion to postpone the application until the planning staff deems it complete.
Is there a second?
Can I just add a comment?
Please.
So I just want to clarify that those comments were in the packet prior to the newer submission that was sent after the packet went out. So I just want to say, you know, they did submit new materials, and they are aware that you may not have seen them. So I think, you know, if that is the case and you guys have not reviewed that, just, I would like that to be on the record.
Are they in the current packet that we have?
No,
No.
they were sent
They were
out
sent via
subsequent.
email.
It was sent by email prior to this, okay. Is there a second to Paul's motion, to Mr. Mano's motion?
I would second it, and I would just add, I did receive the email edition on the 19th, but there are still issues about the 600 square foot addition and also about the table. And this is a significant application, and I am not comfortable reviewing it until the staff has done a complete job vetting it. So I would also support us postponing this until later on.
Bless you. Is there further discussion? Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with the, I will not vote in favor of the motion. I reviewed the additional information that the applicant provided. I did not see anything incredibly fatal with the first application that was put forward. I think that the applicant did change around the lot lines, and I'd like to give them an opportunity to at least explain to us what they have changed on it, help us understand that, and if we still did have some questions or concerns at that point in time, that we could then make a motion to postpone. But I think just preliminarily doing this is unnecessary. I'm ready to move forward with this application.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Okay, then we will vote on the motion to.
Could I just clarify?
sorry.
So, from the planning department comments that you read, it looks like the number one, the boundary line along Andrew Jarvis having a front yard setback was corrected. There seemed to have been another change to one of the other setbacks that I wasn't sure whether or not it was correct, but it didn't necessarily change my overall interpretation of the plans. And then I guess for clarification from Steph, on one of the site plans, the provided table column, that was still an issue that hasn't been corrected.
Correct,
Okay.
yeah, so I can list them later if that's more appropriate to do it, if it comes up in discussion later on. But I do still have concerns about the updated table. I don't think it should hold it back, but there need to be conditions of approval attached to any approval that's given. Definitely.
And that's because the application that's in the packet is what we would be approving unless we add these conditions?
You can approve what was submitted subsequent, because it is on record, it has been posted,
Okay.
it has been distributed. But even the changes that were made, there were other changes that didn't equal what we were asking.
Okay.
So there are still errors in the newest submission as well.
Okay.
Is there any way we can just continue it 1 week? We're meeting again next week.
Well, let's see what happens with this. There's a motion on the floor, too.
Oh, okay.
You second.
That would work too.
Do you want to amend the motion?
The motion is to postpone it until the planning staff feels the application is complete.
So I'm going to call the question, and a yes vote postpones it prior to hearing it this evening. Okay?
Can I, just point of order, can I make that a date and time certain?
Until the planning staff feels the application is complete.
I
That could
know.
be next week.
There could be an issue with the notice if you
It
say
needs
that.
to be a date.
So if there could be a date and time certain, and then if it needs to be postponed again, that's okay, but if you could either postpone it until next week or until April, that would be cleaner.
Okay.
Point of inquiry, so if we postpone it for 1 week, do we have a notice issue? Or would the applicant be required to renotice it?
You're right, that does get complicated because this has
Yeah,
been
that's the
postponed
problem.
again. It would probably need to be
April.
postponed until April. My issue with the planning department decides is we're not giving notice to the public of when that's gonna be taken up again, even if we do need to.
I'm trying to give the
postpone
planning
it.
staff as much leeway, though.
I understand that. I would prefer a date.
A
and
date
time
certain?
though.
Okay. To the April meeting.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so a yes vote postpones it until April. Ms. Record?
Yes.
Ms. Gebbert?
Are they both seated?
Oh, wait,
Yeah.
there.
I don't know whether.
Oh, no, you're right. I'm so sorry. I was so used to using you guys all the time. All right, Jody already voted, so we'll let Jody
I'll
do
just
this.
stay out.
Mr. Mannell?
Yes.
Ms. Margison?
Yes.
Mr. Ram?
No.
Mr. Mattson?
No.
Mr. Neese?
No.
And the chair votes no. So
So we're gonna move forward.
we're going to move forward.
Thank you very much.
And just a point of clarity, I'm off this one now?
You are not voting, but you may participate in the
Perfect, but
public
just-
hearing.
Just clarifying. Thank you so much.
Just a inquiry of staff.
Yep.
We don't have the updated submission in front of us.
I can pull it up. This is the updated submission in front of you. It was emailed and it's also posted online, so as long as you guys are connected to the internet, it's online as well.
Okay, but what you're putting up here is the new one,
Is the
so
updated
that's fine.
submission.
That's a big no.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. Chris Mulligan on behalf of Friends of the Lafayette House. With me is Joe Coronati from Jones and Beach Engineers. I also have Lynn Spang and Melanie Martz, who are members of the board of directors of Friends of the Lafayette House, and Renee Sullivan, who's the executive director of the Friends of the Lafayette House. Thank you for agreeing to proceed this evening in spite of some of the irregularities. I'd like to just point out that the plan that has been submitted, and most recently in my communications with Ms. Casella, I compiled a complete package. This application sort of came in piecemeal since December, unfortunately. But the plans themselves, the site plan hasn't changed substantively. What has changed on this is the proper front yard and secondary front yard setbacks were not accurately depicted on the site plans as they were originally submitted. And this is an interesting property from a setback point of view, because although it has a Lafayette Road address, it doesn't have any frontage on Lafayette Road. It has a fair amount of frontage on Andrew Jarvis Drive, but no access from Andrew Jarvis Drive. So the front yard setback technically should be on Lafayette Road. Secondary front yard setback should be on Andrew Jarvis Drive. And I guess the side yard setback of 10 feet is the one that is most impacting this project, because that's where the proposed addition, am I doing this right? No, maybe not. The proposed addition is closest to the side yard setback on the north end of the property. But whether or not that's a side yard or a rear yard setback, the addition is well within it. So we were never asking for setback relief. I apologize that the plans are confusing and somewhat inaccurate, but that's not relief that we need. As you will note from your agenda, what we are seeking is relief to expand a pre-existing non-conforming use and a pre-existing non-conforming building, and also lot coverage relief because the addition puts us a hair over the 20% building coverage requirement. So that explains kind of what the confusion was going forward. But just a little bit of background on this property. This is a property that has been a group home for developmentally disabled adults. It has been in that capacity for 40 years. And what we are proposing to do is build modern, very modest caretaker quarters for the on-site caretakers that staff this building. There's a couple of corrections to the narrative I want to just point out to you. In the beginning of the narrative, it states that the caretaker's quarters are in addition to the existing 13 bedrooms. That should state that the caretaker's quarters presently are included in the 13 bedrooms that you see on the architectural floor plans. Right now, there are 13 bedrooms. 12 of them are designated to residents of the facility. One of them is presently used by the on-site caretakers. And the on-site caretakers will leave the facility on the weekends and be replaced by a weekend respite staff that will have to, that take up residence in sort of a room that is designated, I believe, as storage on the site. So the plan is to move the weekend respite caretakers into the 13th bedroom that is presently housing the caretakers, and move the caretakers, the full-time caretakers, into the new unit that's being proposed to be built with this project. So again, I apologize for that error in the applicant's narrative. But the use on this site is not allowed, obviously, in the single residence B zone, but it has existed for 40 years on the site in harmony with the uses surrounding it. Surrounding this are not only some residential uses, but also 3 churches and the high school. So it is a neighborhood that is very varied in terms of the uses that you see. And the property, again, is fairly unique. It has a Lafayette Road address, but no frontage on Lafayette Road, and it has the actual frontage on Andrew Jarvis Drive, but no access on Andrew Jarvis Drive. The site plans that we provided, and I think the staff reports overhead photographs depict pretty accurately what the property is composed of. We have a single building with a couple of small outbuildings. The outbuildings and sheds will all be removed if this project is approved, and we will be building a relatively modest addition to the existing building. The provision of housing for developmentally disabled adults is a very challenging proposition in this area. I can tell you that for families with developmentally disabled adults, this is what keeps you awake at night. When your family members age out of the public school system, the amount of resources that are publicly available for this population are very, very limited. So it's very important for the community to support these types of facilities, and Portsmouth, to its credit, has supported this and other similar facilities like Betty's Dream and the Green Guard Center, et cetera. So the facility has capacity for 12 residents. That number is not to be increased. The number of staff members at any given time will not increase from what exists in the current configuration. We're just adding some additional living space. So there should be no impact on the neighbors in terms of density, traffic, anything of that nature. So the intensity of the use does not increase with this project. So with that said, again, what we are seeking are variances to allow building coverage that is just a shade over the 20% that is permitted, and variances to extend, enlarge, or change nonconforming uses in nonconforming buildings. The variance criteria. Granting the variances will not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the ordinance, nor will it be contrary to the public interest. Those two criteria are considered together, and your analysis should be whether or not the essential character of the neighborhood will be altered by this project, or if the health, safety, and welfare of the public will be affected. Here, the existing facility has existed in this neighborhood for 40 years. It's a neighborhood that is surrounded by, or is comprised of institutional and place of worship uses as well as residential uses. This is a good fit for this use, and that's been proven over time. The expansion is a very minor expansion, again, less than 0.5% over the permitted building coverage. Health, safety, and welfare of the public will not be threatened in any way. We're not increasing the density or the number of residents that will be on the facility. Substantial justice will be done by granting the variance. This requires the board to balance the loss to the applicant should the variance be denied against some gain to the general public if you were to require strict conformance. Here, the non-conforming use and the non-conforming building are existing conditions. We're simply expanding them very slightly and very modestly, and it's necessary to allow the organization to evolve and move into the future for the benefit of this very vulnerable population that it serves. So substantial justice would be done by granting the variance. Values of surrounding properties will not be diminished. Here, the use on the site, again, has existed for 40 years without negative impact on any of the surrounding properties. We will be enhancing the property by upgrading it with this addition. We'll be removing the outbuildings that are on the site. So values of surrounding properties will not be negatively impacted in any way if you grant the variances. Then finally, there are special conditions associated with the property that prevent its proper enjoyment under the strict terms of the zoning ordinance and thus constitutes an unnecessary hardship. The lot in question is fairly large, larger than the other residential lots in the area, and it again has no frontage on Lafayette Road, even though it has a Lafayette Road address. It has access to Lafayette Road via a deeded easement and a shared driveway with 3 other properties. But these are all special conditions that, it also has been home to a non-conforming pre-existing use for many, many years. These are all special conditions of this property that distinguish it from others in the neighborhood. The use is a reasonable use. It already exists on this site and is not being expanded in any significant way. And there's no fair and substantial relationship between the purpose of the ordinance and its application to this property. This is not a permitted use in the single residence B zone, obviously, but it's existed in its present location in the single residence B zone for many, many years. The modest expansion in no way is going to compromise any part of the zoning, any purpose of the zoning ordinance that the zoning ordinance is there to protect. So we believe the use will not frustrate the purposes of the zoning ordinance, and we hope you would agree that this is a very important project that needs to move forward. One last thing before I open it up for questions. There is a question regarding discrepancies in the floor plans and the site plans over how large the addition is. The floor plans that were prepared by the architect are dimensioned internally to be just under 600 square feet. When we originally submitted this application, we did not survey the property. We submitted information based on the city's tax maps, and the planning department felt that we were close enough to the lot or the building coverage requirement that they wanted a survey. And fair enough. When we performed a survey, we, Mr. Carnelli will explain this, but he dimensioned the addition such that the exterior walls and the corners would be dimensioned onto the plans, and that explains the discrepancy between the just under 600 square feet that are shown on the floor plans and the 635 feet that we've called out on the site plan and in our narrative. Again, that puts us just a hair over the required building coverage, but that's the explanation for the difference, and Joe can explain that much better than I can, I'm sure. But again, we feel that this is a very modest, minor increase to an existing facility that does very important work in the community, and we hope you would agree with us and support the application. Thank you.
Are there questions for the applicant? Mr. Ram?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So the use that is proposed here, I'm looking through our ordinance, we don't have anything called a group home, and maybe staff can clarify, is it intended to fall under a residential care facility, or?
I believe it does, if you want to give me a second.
Okay. I guess follow-up question to that is there was no previous history found. Do you have any idea, Attorney Mulligan, how this use came to be, permitted on this property?
I don't. We submitted the original subdivision plan, which indicates that the property was conveyed by J. Philip McCaffrey to Great Bay School and Training Center. Great Bay School is the predecessor to Friends of the Lafayette School. They actually closed, and this nonprofit took it over to basically save the facility in the last, what was that, 2-3 years ago? 2017. Okay, so it's now a few years ago. But I believe it was acquired for this purpose and purpose-built for this.
And your history indicates that this was used for this purpose since circa 1984, I believe? Okay.
And just by way of full disclosure, Priscilla and Philip Pettis, who are descendants of Mr. McCaffrey, are here because Priscilla still lives next door, so they may have more information on that, but that's my information.
It is a residential care facility.
Okay. Which is not permitted in the SRB district.
With more than 5 residents, correct?
Yes, correct. Okay.
Any other questions?
And just, this may be more for staff. So I guess the one rub, and I did not realize in the explanation from the applicant's attorney, is that the change in the lot coverage is the result of taking a survey. So he's indicating 20.4% and asking for relief. However, we did not advertise for any relief from the lot coverage. Is that correct?
Yes, and the reason being that we round down.
Okay.
So that puts them right at that 20%.
Okay. Right, because every 0.1% is 33 square feet. So going from 600 to 635 did not change the fact that you were over 20 one way or the other.
That, correct me if I'm wrong, but when I looked at those calculations, the 635 was included in that 20.4, correct? Mr.
That's
Mulligan?
correct.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. So if the board agrees, the staff's opinion is that 20.4, we penalize you if you're 20.5, we round you up. If you're 20.4, you get the gift, and we round you down. Okay. All right, thank you.
Other questions? Mr. Neese?
If I might have 2 questions. There's a couple places in the meeting package where the request refers to a caretaking unit, but my understanding that implies to me that it's going to have more residents, but my understanding is what you're really requesting is a caretaker's unit. Do I have that correct?
Yes, there will not be any additional residents at the facility than there are now. There will just be a newer, more modern, and more segregated and separated caretaker's residence.
Okay.
So as it stands now, Stephanie, if you can scroll to the floor plans, I think the existing floor plan shows, now I'm going to walk over. So the existing floor plan shows a bedroom, I believe it's here, that isn't separated from the. Oh, it's behind, I'm sorry. That's not entirely separated from the residential units. So the new caretaker's unit will be built back here and will be more segregated from it. So it's just to make it a more desirable and private living arrangement for the caretakers.
Thank you. I have another question.
Yes,
if I
go
might.
ahead.
So in the description of the property, you refer to a separate caretaker apartment will make living arrangements much easier and more desirable for the house managers and staff. In the description of meeting the variance criteria for substantial justice, you refer to it as necessary to assure the continued successful operation. Could you elaborate on why the variance criteria seem to suggest that this is necessary to continue operation?
Well, I mean, you know, I think you have to put yourself in the shoes of the caretakers who are there. This just makes this that much more desirable for the staffing, and obtaining staff is, you know, a challenge. And so we've got excellent staff that we want to keep, and it's imperative that we do so. And making a improvement to the property that allows us to do that and facilitates that is, in our opinion, necessary.
Thank you. No further questions.
Okay, anybody else? Ms. Murchison?
So a question, you're not going to increase, and I may have missed this, so I apologize, the amount of residents in the building. What's going to happen with the existing caretaker space?
So the existing caretaker space is just one of the 13 bedrooms that you see on the existing floor plans. That will now be used by the weekend respite staff.
Okay.
So when the full-time staff leaves, they'll just button up the caretaker's unit, and the respite staff, which is now using the swing room, will use the 13th bedroom.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question for the engineer. On the site plan regarding the setbacks, with the updated plans, I see that along Andrew Jarvis Drive, the 30-foot front yard, secondary front yard setback has correctly been applied. But kind of that little jog, the corner up by the right-of-way, is that the only portion that's considered frontage, as opposed to the whole lot line behind those two residences, which is listed as a side yard, so it's only 10 feet instead of 30 feet?
Correct. I
Please-
believe if I
please
understand you
int-
correctly,
excuse
so
me.
the.
Please tell us who you are before you start.
Joe Coronati, Jones and Beach Engineers. Yes, the legal frontage is Andrew Jarvis, because the lot has no actual frontage on Lafayette Road. So then came down to where are the sides and where are the rears, and that's where we went back and forth, which is why the table got messed up. We kept flip-flopping which ones were which, and then, and that's what we will correct now that we sort of know which ones are which.
Oh, and so there's actually only one frontage. There's no, where the right-of-way is facing the driveway towards Lafayette is considered a side yard?
I'm not sure that's the case. That might be a question for.
Well, I
staff.
guess to expound upon this, no matter what the setback is, the addition is not within.
Right. The addition's about 37 feet away from the sideline, or what we call the side setback on the Pettis side of the property, the north side. So whether it's a side or rear, we're more than 30 feet from that sideline.
Okay, and then the 10-foot side yard setback behind the two residences, that one's definitely correct, so that, because if that became 30, it looks like the existing structure would probably fall within that.
That may be the case, but we're not expanding that part of the existing structure, so we wouldn't need relief from that.
Okay,
But I do feel that one is a side setback in either frontage situation. I think it's the other two lot lines that bounce back and forth.
okay.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone to speak in favor of this petition? Anyone to speak in favor? Is there anyone to speak in opposition to the petition? Is there anyone to speak to, for, or against? Okay. Then the public hearing is closed. And Mr. Mannell.
Got a question for Stephanie to follow up on what Mr. Riom said. Has this location ever applied for or received a variance for its non-conforming use?
Not from what we had on record.
Thank you.
Okay. Discussion? A motion? More information before we go forward? What would you like to do?
I don't know whether can I talk now?
No,
Or is it
you
too
had
late?
to talk.
You're out.
I'm always-
I'm sorry. Mr. Ram.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I would move to approve the request as presented and advertised with two stipulations. One is that the facility be limited to 12 care residents or residents under care. And that secondly, that the applicant provide updated plans to the planning department reflecting appropriate setbacks for the project, setback requirements for the project.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Mattson. Is there discussion?
I need to make my motion.
Oh, my goodness, Dave. I'm so sorry. I feel like I haven't been here in ages.
All right. Moving on to make my motion. So part of what we have here, first of all, in terms of the actual structure, as the staff has indicated, the applicant did kind of put forward that, hey, we're slightly above the 20% maximum. That said, as I indicated, we penalize you if you're 0.5 or 0.5% and above. You get the benefit of the doubt if you're below. So the applicant is still below, and it's based off of a surveyed result. So I have confidence that that would actually be accurate and there wouldn't be an issue going forward that would cause the applicant to have to return back to us. In terms of the setbacks, I understand that there was some confusion, and it's a unique property. It's not entirely surprising that there was some confusion about what's a front yard, what's a side yard. Certainly there was an understanding of what the required setbacks were, how they should be applied to this property. Probably was a little confusing. The applicant, through the revision process, probably should have been more diligent about making sure that every I was dotted and every T was crossed. Failed to do so, but that said, really what the applicant is asking for here in terms of an actual addition is far away from the setbacks, regardless of which orientation that you have. I don't think there, again, is any concern that the applicant would be building this addition and going and creating a future problem that would have to come back to this board. So those two things said, I do think that is covered. The last is the use. So as has been recognized, this is not a permitted use in this zone. We are treating it as a residential care facility with more than 5 residents, not allowed. There is obviously a long history of that being there. Zoning was certainly in place in 1984. Was there some provision back then, or was there something that allowed by just going ahead and putting this through the planning board and getting it on record as being planned out to support this type of facility somehow negated the need for it to come through this board? That's a possibility. I guess we could do more research. I don't think that that really affects this one way or the other. I think it's a use that's been there for a long period of time, since circa 1984. Really, the applicant is not asking in any way to intensify that use. The use will still be the same, and my stipulation was explicitly put in to continue that way, because there will now be an extra room. The applicant has indicated the intent of using that extra room is to provide a unique spot for a weekend or holiday or whatever it is, additional caretakers who might be there to have their own space. That's great. I do want to make sure that, again, from an intensity standpoint, that there is something on record that says, no, you are still limited to the initial 12 care patients or care, those who are having care provided to them. So we're not increasing the intensity of the use. This is really just to add on and provide more potential for the caretakers of those residents. So with that, I think that they're meeting the criteria to have this granted. So granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest, and granting the variance would observe the spirit of the ordinance. We usually put those two together. The question is this unusual relative to the overall characteristics of the neighborhood? So certainly the addition on the back end of the property, away from the property line, the setback lines, also sort of hidden really behind a couple of other homes down a long driveway, really not even visible from Andrew Jarvis Drive. There's really nothing there that is going to affect the overall feel of the structure. And again, going back to the use, this is a use that has been there for a long time, has worked successfully. The neighborhood has integrated itself around it. There are new structures that are being built in the nearby properties, so it indicates that really there is nothing about that unpermitted use that is negative towards the neighborhood being a successful neighborhood for the city. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. This is our balancing test. Is there some interest that the public has in saying that we should not allow this use to continue as it is, and not allow it to have this improved caretaker facility that will allow it to continue on into the future, probably more successfully based off of the current situation in our area with regards to being able to attract and retain talent, especially for difficult work such as what is done in this facility and other types of care facilities. I don't think there's anything that the public is losing here that would outweigh that benefit to both the property owner and I think to the public in general, and in having this capability still in our community. Granting the variance would not diminish the values of surrounding properties. Again, this is a very small addition. It is well within the required setbacks, not visible to neighbors. The use, again, is a longstanding use and has not demonstrated any negative impacts to the neighborhood. So I think that it passes that. And then the hardship criteria, again, I think the unique factor here, especially with regards to the use, is that it has been a longstanding use. Although we don't know of a variance history for it, we do know that it was represented at the time that the property was subdivided. There was clearly intent by the nature of who was making the subdivision, who was going to be in there, that this group home use was always part of the original concept. So I do think that is a uniqueness why this particular parcel does not represent the zoning as a whole of the whole area, and therefore that is a hardship. It is unique, and that the use is a reasonable one. That again, they're not increasing the intensity of the use, and that it's really just the addition of a relatively modest addition that is going to provide better caretaker accommodations. So with that, I recommend approval.
Does the second have anything to add?
Yes, I'll just add, for me, the main reason why I'm supporting this is The variance requested is for a use, and this is a use that has always been in place for this structure, and is not getting any more intense. It's staying the same. It's an existing non-conforming use that is coming before the board for a modification to a building, but the building doesn't need, the addition doesn't need any dimensional relief. So as far as I'm concerned, it makes a lot of sense to support this.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there discussion? Ms. Margerson?
So I will say I'm not going to be supporting this application. I think it's a great application, don't get me wrong. In my professional life, I work with a lot of children with developmental disabilities, and there's certainly a gap as they age out of the school system and trying into long-term supports and services, and housing is a huge issue for adults with developmental disabilities. So, you know, it's not for the purpose itself. It's just that for the same reasons I voted to continue this, the table is not correct in the site plan, and according to the staff memo, they're close to needing a dimensional variance. And I just feel like before we vote on an application, we need to have clean submissions and make sure that there aren't any errors in any of the application materials. So I will not be supporting this.
Is there any further discussion? Mr. Manno?
Following up on what Ms. Marginson said, I can't support the application. It's a small variance. I think it's a great facility. I have no problem with what they're asking, but I have no idea, and apparently neither does planning staff, on whether or not they've ever received a variance or approval from any of the land use boards for a non-conforming use, which leaves me in the dark as far as the variance requested. So I cannot support this application.
Is there any further discussion? I just want to say a couple of things. For me, the fact that this has been there for 20 years and we don't have minutes from the meeting or whatever is kind of, for me, is kind of a moot point. I don't know.
Over 40 years, actually.
Okay. Yes, you're right. I don't know how to do that.
Tempest
I don't know
Fugit.
how to make that go back and fix it. But I do want to point out, just so that you can think about this, that if we deny this because we want more information or for whatever reason, we are putting them in a Fisher v. Dover situation, which can be a difficult thing to get oneself out of. And perhaps there's a better way to do it, to have the postponement, to... I'm sorry, I guess I didn't know you knew everything. So something to think about, not to get us and the applicant in a jam. Mr. Mattson?
Yeah, in addition to that point, approving this current application would resolve any previous missing history because they'll now have an approved existing non-conforming use.
So, would someone like to make...
It doesn't. If the non-conforming use has never been approved, approving an addition to a non-conforming use doesn't approve the non-conforming use.
It acknowledges a number of... It
It acknowledges it, but
Right. It acknowledges it. So what would you like to do?
Well, we have a motion on the table to approve.
yeah.
So we have to call the vote.
Who's the second?
Jody did.
I seconded it, yeah.
Peter did.
Yes, it's been seconded. Ms. Record?
Yes.
Mr. Manno?
No.
Ms. Margerson?
Yes.
Mr. Ram?
I mean,
Yes.
I'm sorry, no, because you were looking at me. The motion is to approve, no.
Yes, the motion is to... Mr. Ram?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
Mr. Neese?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. You are approved. Okay, I just thought that was worth...
I understand.
Because I wasn't sure this was going to go.
Yeah, well,
Okay. So the next item of business, our first item under new business, it will be Ms. Gefford who is voting on this and Ms. Record who will sit out. the request of Karen J. Parker Revocable Trust of 2012 owner for property located at 86 Haven Road, whereas relief is needed to construct an addition to the existing structure, which requires the following. 1, variance from section 10.521 to A, allow a 9-foot front yard where 10 is required by front yard averaging. B, to allow a building coverage of 29% where 20% is allowed. And 2, variance from section 10.321 to allow a non-conforming structure or building to be extended, reconstructed, or enlarged without conforming to the requirements of the ordinance. Said property is located on Assessor Map 206, Lot 27, and lies within the Single Residence B District. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. For the record, Derek Durbin. I'm here on behalf of the owner, Karen Parker, who's also seated here behind me. So the property we're discussing is, as you'll see from the site plan, an oddly shaped parcel of land. I think I described it as a logger's boot just because I heard somebody say that recently and thought that was an interesting way to describe the shape of the property, or you could say it's just shaped like the state of Idaho. Either way, it's longer in the front. It's 86 feet of street frontage on Haven Road. Narrows back on the one side, as you can see, to the northerly property boundary, all the way back to 10 feet in the very rear. The property is small in comparison with many of the surrounding properties on Haven Road. It has about 52% of the lot area required by SRB zoning, and I'd say about a little more than half have quite a bit more lot area on that particular street than this property. The property is situated at the end of Haven Road, and is really uniquely situated in that behind it and to the south, I believe it is, yes, south. It's Little Harbor Elementary School has open fields behind it. So it is a very unique setting in that respect. The applicant lives in the single-family home on the property. It's a pretty small single-family home. She lives there with her 2 teenage daughters. The home is a story in height at the very front, transitions back at the very highest point to 1 3/4 story. I'm told that that's just slightly under 8-foot ceiling height at the tallest point. And then it transitions down into a very small 1-story sunroom addition in the back. The applicant would like to construct a full second floor over the front 2 sections of the home. The purpose would be, number 1, to give her adequate headroom, which is an issue, as she's described to me. She'll be blow drying her hair sometimes in a certain area of the upstairs, and she'll hit the blow dryer on the ceiling. So that gives you a little bit of perspective on kind of what it's like, at least in the bathroom area on the second floor. And then the other purpose behind the addition is to add, some additional functionality in terms of adding a bathroom and a bedroom to that second floor. Right now, they share a bathroom on the second floor. Karen does with her 2 daughters. Depending on how you calculate the front setback of the home, it doesn't actually appear that expansion over the front 2 sections of the home requires any relief. Of course, we don't have surveys of the neighboring properties, but if you were to look at section 10.516.10 of the ordinance, that's the average alignment exception to calculating front yard setback, and it allows you to utilize the average distance of principal structures within 200 feet on the same side of the street to measure your front yard to set your front yard setback requirement. In this case, based on city GIS, it's 10 feet. The second floor expansion will occur beyond that. That being said, as I said, we included that request for relief because we don't have survey data on some of the other properties, and we did it out of an abundance of caution in the event that there is any type of inaccuracy with that measurement. In addition to the second floor expansion, Karen would like to add a farmer's porch onto the front of the home, again, to add some functionality, also improve the aesthetic appearance of the house. The farmer's porch would be approximately 317 square feet. It's actually 316.50 based on my notes. In overall area, it would extend from one side, one entryway, the home, the front entryway, to the north, to the entryway to the south, and connect those 2 points. That's ultimately what's really truly driving the need for relief tonight. It would increase building coverage on the property by 4%. The new porch would also be 9 feet from the front property boundary at its closest point, which would be in the north, to that front boundary, so that obviously even if you use the 10-foot calculation as the front yard setback, it would still require relief. And the farmer's porch does, as you'll see, jog back on the plan, so it's just 9 feet at the closest point. It's more like 12 where it jogs back. So with that, happy to just turn to the variance criteria and go through them. Public interest, spirit of the ordinance, is observed by granting the variance relief. In this case, it's observed by allowing the reasonable expansion of an existing home to make it more functional and aesthetically appealing. The primary purpose behind the minimum setback requirements is to protect the light, air, and space of abutting properties, while the primary purpose behind building coverage limitation is really to prevent the overcrowding of land. The applicant is only seeking a minimal amount of front yard setback and building coverage relief, arguably all of which pertains to that farmer's porch, which isn't an enclosed addition, but rather an open type, more like a deck type addition in the front. I've already discussed the average alignment, but again, the second floor expansion would occur beyond the 10 feet, which in theory is the front yard setback for the properties within 200 feet on Haven Road on the same side. It wouldn't have any negative impact on any abutters' light, air, and space. The only impacted abutter would be the neighbor across the street, and this wouldn't have any tangible impact upon them. Again, the farmer's porch is a pretty benign structure. It wouldn't have any, wouldn't negatively alter the essential character of the neighborhood. And I think Karen's property is really the outlier in terms of not having a full second floor over her house. I think most of the other properties in the neighborhood do. Substantial justice will be done in granting the variances. Can't think of any real conceivable gain in denying them. It's a pretty reasonable expansion of the home. We'll approve it aesthetically without impacting abutting properties. It could be argued that there would be a loss to the applicant in denying the relief. I think the personal hardship is really in this, under this particular criteria, is having to share a bathroom upstairs with her 2 teenage daughters, and one where she hits her hairdryer on the ceiling. So keeping that in perspective, there would be a loss to the applicant in denying the relief. Surrounding property values will not be diminished by granting the relief. Improvements would be in keeping with the character of the neighborhood, and again, if anything, should add value, having a tastefully designed addition or additions onto the house of this nature. Literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship. Property does have several distinguishing conditions. Its irregular shape and size are 2 of those conditions. That really means that it has a very limited building envelope, which makes it uniquely burdened by the dimensional regulations. The original home on the property was constructed in 1941. It's really more like a cottage at that point in time, obviously long before current zoning went into effect. In addition, it's bordered on 2 sides by city land, which is just open space. So for all these reasons, we believe that there is no fair and substantial relationship between the general purpose of the ordinance provisions, here setback and building coverage, and the relationship to the property. Finally, the proposed use is reasonable. It will continue as a single-family residential use. That will not change. Karen will continue to reside there with her 2 daughters. So for these reasons, I hope you'll approve the request for relief tonight, and happy to answer any questions. Karen is also here to answer any questions about the particular design.
Are there any questions for Attorney Jervis? Ms. Marchison?
So just, is the house on the lot a little crooked? Is it not like on an axis with the street?
That's, yeah, go. You have to come up and introduce yourself, so, yeah, and speaking. What's that? Okay. All right, if you want.
Karen Parker. There's a sidewalk to Little Harbor that fronts about half of the house. So the street ends about halfway down, and then the sidewalk starts. And so, yeah, the house is a little crooked on the.
So it is a little crooked.
Yeah.
It's on the northern side, it's further to the street than it is on the southern side.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And your calculation is that the front yard setback right now is 12 feet?
The front yard, you mean the average front yard?
Yeah, the average front yard
is 10 feet.
10 feet.
But it's currently 12?
But the house is currently based on, I believe, where the steps go to 18 inches or above grade. It's at 12 feet.
It's at 12 feet, okay.
Yeah.
And just one last, I just noticed I never know if this is the GIS, it just shows that it's 8 feet, 8.1, but that's not, that is page 39 of our packet.
That's correct. Yeah, that's the way it came out there, which is, again, my hesitation with using that.
I understand.
Yeah, and relying upon that average, because it could mean, the other house is 4 feet or 6 feet next to it, the other one 9 or 11, so, yeah, but yes, that's what it came out to, 8.1 feet on there, but we know it's not that,
Okay, thank you.
yes.
Anybody else? Ms. Gefford?
Can you talk a little bit about the Little Harbor sidewalk? Because it looks like, I mean, if there's anything that gets used, I appreciate that Haven is used by you guys, right, to get to your garage, but that sidewalk is used all the time. And if you bring your property out, and it's a little confusing because it's not shown on your plan, how close, so you're bringing your porch out and you're having it like a longer thing, how close to that sidewalk is that?
Is it the same?
Not coming out further than that.
Yeah,
Yeah, you might as well.
yeah.
The porch, if there is a picture in there, the house jogs back. So there's like a little front entry that is the closest to the street and the sidewalk on the north corner. Then the whole house steps back about 4 feet. And so that's where we're proposing to put the porch. So the porch wouldn't come in any closer to the street than in line with the steps, yeah.
So just, and can you give me a sense of feet? And it's only because I don't see, when I look at the plans and even the map for zoning purposes, it doesn't show the sidewalk. So when I look at the pictures and what I've seen, it was,
The sidewalk curves away from the house, so you.
I'm sorry, if you need to
Yeah, I'm
come up
sorry,
here.
sorry. Yeah, you can see in that picture there, the sidewalk curves away from the house. So there's a bend in the sidewalk, so it does go further away from the house.
Okay, I think we can get to a better picture. Hold on a second.
okay.
I recommend page 45.
Yeah, it's probably, I've looked at all the pictures and then I walk by.
And the current-
I think, yeah.
Page numbers on here.
Yeah, you see the sidewalk curving away, yes, but and I apologize, the porch looks like it comes out farther than the steps, and so at the closest point, but maybe I'm misinterpreting your plans, it looks like you're 3 feet past the edge of the steps in the front, which looks to me like it's only 2 feet away from the sidewalk, but I could be wrong because it's not clear on the plans.
Yeah, so one of the things with the site plan, and we won't get into any history behind.
I'm gonna stop you for a second.
Oh,
though.
okay, sure.
I am satisfied looking at the
Yeah.
plans that the entrance now shifts to the middle of the house.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah,
looking at
that's
you.
okay.
And if that's the case, then your ingress and egress isn't like directly on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to redo the, I want to make
I
sure that if
understand.
we say yes, that we're not adversely affecting the sidewalk. And I'm going to ask also that, Steph, have you looked at this at all? Like, of everything, Haven Road is like a nothing to me, but that sidewalk gets used all the time.
I haven't looked past the lot line.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's interesting because one of the reasons, besides the connectivity and the functional aspects associated with the front porch, one of the reasons for it is really to have some connectivity with the movement past, that to be able to sit out there to some degree and be able to interact with people that are passing by, which doesn't exist right now the way the house is
Your
laid out.
deck is on the side,
Correct.
is that
Yeah.
correct? Okay.
That's correct.
9 feet from that blue line.
May I ask a question?
Absolutely.
It's my impression, looking at the design, that the new farmer's porch is not going to come out any more than the existing top stoop of your existing stairway. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay. And the house goes back.
Yeah, no, I mean, it does go back,
And
but it's that initial.
Other questions? Mr. Neese?
Thank you. I'd like to follow up on a question Ms. Margison asked. I'm a little confused by the site plan and the text in the letter. The site plan seems to show that the existing setback is 12 feet. The letter says that the revisions will lead to being 1 foot farther than the existing setback.
I need to, yes, and I'm actually glad that you pointed that out. That was a mistake that I had made, that I mentioned to Karen I'd noticed today when I was going through this. That was simply a drafting error on my part, yeah. And I think it may have been related to the 10-foot calculation. I may have been confused when I was like looking at numbers and used the 10-foot number instead of the 12. 10, yeah.
So it'll really be 3 feet farther from the existing.
That's correct.
At that one side.
That's correct, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was a mistake on my part. There was one other mistake, but I won't get into it because it shouldn't be material, but I highlighted one existing nonconformity, said we were increasing it, but we weren't. I put it in red, but it was not supposed to be in red.
Other questions? Mr. Ram?
Yeah, as a follow-up to the chair's question, I think your answer may have been misleading because ultimately that little pathway that leads up to the front entrance of the house is going to be 3 feet shorter.
I'm sorry, the pathway that leads up to the,
Front of the house.
Yes.
If you're going from a 12-foot setback to a 9-foot setback, that's 3 feet.
correct,
Right, so,
but we have stairs, yeah.
so you're eliminating the stairs? Ultimately,
So,
your setback is 3 feet closer.
that's correct, yeah. At the closest point, it's 3 feet closer, right? I mean,
So something 18 inches high
Above-
is
yep.
3 feet closer to the
That's-
sidewalk than before.
So, no, so you can see the stone steps?
Mm-hmm.
The porch is only going to come out that exact same footprint. We're just replacing the stone with wood. And then extending it across, jogging it back to follow the house.
But you still need steps in front of your
The
your new porch.
The deck is only going to be 3 feet at that end, which is what is that big stone slate landing now. And the steps are in the exact same footprint on the porch as this. So we shouldn't be coming further forward.
So then I don't understand why there's a 3-foot difference in your setback, Mr.
They
Durbin.
don't count the steps.
No, they don't. Well, above 18 inches.
let me take a moment to look at the site plan. I believe the site plan, one of the
This doesn't count the steps.
issues with the site plan is that it doesn't presently show the front steps. It's only showing, at least as far as I can see it's only showing the yellow part on the site plan is showing the footprint of the house before the steps. So the steps actually step out. My interpretation is that we are coming out 3 feet from where the existing footprint of the house is,
Excuse me.
absent the steps. But I,
Page one.
So then you're on page 40,
I'm on
where you say
39.
12-foot existing, that is not correct.
we believe that the engineer measured to the midpoint of the existing steps where they pointed out the 12 feet. I just don't see, unless that white area was intended to be the steps where they put a block, it's just shown abnormally. And I couldn't distinguish, as a person reviewing the plan, whether or not that was intended to depict the front steps. I mean, it's shown as a block as opposed to steps. So our representation is the farmer's porch at its closest point will be 9 feet from the property boundary. I mean, that much we know. The existing condition, we believe it's 12 feet to that basically the 18-inch mark of the front steps. And it does slope slightly up from north to south there as well. So.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I mean.
Question, okay. Yeah.
I mean, if we're trying to get to the exact measurement of where we are now versus how much farther we're coming out, the measurement that we were given was 3 feet.
Let's see why
But
they're
in
coming out.
my interpretation of the site plan, which, yes, it's not in my opinion, a good site plan. And unfortunately, there's a lot of history that went behind this, which I won't get into, which is where I took over. But it's our understanding they measured from that 18-inch point to come up with the 12. I can't certify that to the board, but that's the measurement I was given.
The stamp.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
No, I'm,
So you're measuring to 18 inches on the new steps, and you're measuring to 18 inches on the old steps. You're telling me that regardless, there's a 3-foot difference there. So something is sticking out 3 feet further than it used to.
I'm telling you that there's 9 feet to the front property boundary. I believe it's 3 feet, yes.
Right, so the question that the board wants to understand is how much closer is this going to appear to people walking down the street? And I don't think we know the answer to that question, is my concern.
I'm going to try this again. Ms. Parker said that they're just keeping the steps as they are, but changing the materials. So you're not lengthening them. No. So it shouldn't be changing the length of the difference from the lowest step to the sidewalk. Okay.
That's correct. The intention of the plan is
Okay.
to just make it continuous, but not come out any further.
Right.
The steps will be
And the
replaced.
farmer's porch will just head off from that highest step.
Right.
So,
And the,
Could be from the lowest step. I mean, but
no, it's from the highest step, otherwise you would have to climb up.
Whatever is 18 inches. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Well, it shows it in the drawing from the highest step. And the step, that stairway exists today, and it will continue to exist.
I think a minor point of clarification is that the existing situation, there's a landing, and then in the new proposed plan, there's no landing, it just goes steps to the porch.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
is
exactly.
But-
the applicant saying that the landing is the thing that continues, not the steps?
No,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's
I
just,
misunderstood.
unfortunately, the plans that we were given are not the most well-drafted plans
We
that I've ever
understand.
seen, and unfortunately, there's no communication with the drafter. So we had to work with the notes and everything else we were given.
page 43 shows, I think, how the steps go up to whether you want to call it a landing or the farmer's porch. It just, bless you, it just goes there. So the question of why, never mind, I'm not going to go say anything else. Okay.
No, I think, may I just, I think I get it now, and I was just trying to line that, which is up on the screen, which is showing the front image with the farmer's porch, with the stamped plan, where you have those color blocks, and I didn't know what they
That
were.
makes no sense to me, so
It's-
I was lucky.
Yeah, it's not good. Trust me, I had to look at this and ask a million questions, and then there wasn't anybody to answer them. And then sift through a lot of city files to figure out where certain things came from. So it was not a fun process.
So do we have more questions? Okay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition? Is there anyone who would like to speak to, for, or against? Okay. Public hearing is closed. So, what would you like to do? Oh, for goodness sake. Discussion?
Go ahead, Emil.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Randall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize. I am not in favor of moving forward with this. I do not think we really understand what the applicant is proposing. I feel it's unfortunate that whatever confusing things have happened with whoever drew this up, it's a very confusing drawing to start with. I'm personally convinced that we don't know what the true setback will ultimately be. I'm not convinced that the 9 feet is right. I'm not sure if the 12 feet is right. So to me, I either would not approve or I would vote in favor of postponing and requiring a resubmission of a corrected plan.
I think I would second just a postponement, because I do think that this probably requires a survey to clarify the front yard setbacks or some other indication that that they are as they were represented. So, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at.
Okay. I agree that in essence, I think this is a simple request, but
Yes.
because of all the if this, then that, that doesn't seem to be very clear as to what our starting point is. So, is there a motion to postpone?
Before we make a motion, just question to staff. You before said if we make a motion to postpone, you'd like a date certain. What would you like here? Like, what is fair for the applicant?
April.
You
Oh, now you're
could
with the
reopen
dates.
the public hearing to ask them what a proper time frame may be. Otherwise, a month postponement, and if we need to postpone again, then we can revisit that at that time.
Thank you.
So can I move that we open for the public hearing for the sole purpose of hearing from the applicant what might be a good date?
Is there a second to Ms. Murchison's motion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye,
Aye.
Okay, I would have gotten there.
except for one.
So, what would you like to do? Well, how much time do you think you need?
I guess it depends on the request from the board. If the request is for a full boundary survey of the property, that's obviously something much different than,
The request is certainly for accurate numbers, and I don't know if you and the planning department will feel that that's the only way to get there. So maybe we don't know that yet.
unfortunately, I don't think we do, because I don't know if a surveyor would be willing to just shoot the front line without doing the other boundaries.
Well, we can give you a date certain, and then you
Come back.
can
Yeah.
discuss what happens at that point. Okay?
And I think it's, I mean, I think it's possible that you can get a surveyor just to do a boundary, a limited survey.
It's possible. I've run into I've just been running into the situation where they say we want to do the full-blown.
So
But
if we do
I
with
think you're right, Beth.
for April, or if May makes you feel better, but if we were to do it for April, you can certainly discuss and postpone again.
Yeah, I have a feeling we'll be back here asking for more extended continuance at that point. But,
How about May?
well, Happy to come back in April, and at least, I can update the board at least at that point if there is a request for continuance on what we've done, and what is being, requested in terms of finding that, the distances.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate it. I know, it was not a great plan to work with.
The public hearing's, do you have a question?
No, you can.
Okay, then the public hearing is closed.
I guess to the board, I'd point out that I can get on board with postponing as well, but if we were to vote on this and we voted to approve it, the applicant would be tied to that 9-foot setback. In a sense, that's not our problem if their numbers are off. But I would also say that if, because of the lack of information, would lead board members to vote in a denial, it would be better to postpone and consider accurate information.
Thank you. Mr. Ram?
Yeah, toward your comment, my concern is there was some concern expressed about what is this really going to look like relative to an important sidewalk to the street. And I don't know, that sidewalk does look kind of close. Like, does it actually encroach upon the applicant's property? I don't know. And the plans, I just do think this is kind of at the heart of what the applicant is asking for. Yeah, there's some overall lot coverage relief, but in my mind, it's pretty minimal. It's really kind of this sense of what is being asked for, because this porch is sticking out pretty far, I guess, at least in my opinion. So I do think it's an important element of our ability to approve it. I think we really need to understand what the current situation is, what they're proposing, and how that's going to look different to help the board make a true determination on whether or not we feel it meets the criteria. My thought.
Okay. So, yes.
I would move that we continue this application into the April meeting with a direction to the applicant to provide accurate measurements of the front yard setback and as they exist currently, and then as they would be, which is driving your variance request after the construction. Does that make sense to everybody?
Second.
Thank you. Okay. Is there further discussion?
Second.
Oh, that was, okay. So we had one over here with Mr. Ram. Okay, so the motion is to postpone for April.
Continue.
To continue to April. Is any further discussion? Okay, a yes vote continues. Ms. Geffert?
Yes.
Mr. Mannel?
Yes.
Ms. Margison?
Yes.
Mr. Ram?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
And Mr. Neese?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay, thank you. Okay. This is an interesting.
Madam Chair, point of order, I'm recused on this
Oh,
next application.
okay, thank you. I did not know that. Yes, as soon as I find what I need to read, I will do that. Okay, the next item of business is item B. And Ms. Record, you are on this time, and Ms. Geff. Oh, no.
No,
they're
both.
Both
on.
are.
You're both on, yes. You are both on.
ML, you look excited.
Isn't this great? So this is item B. The request of DFGI1 LLC, owner for property located at 750 Lafayette Road, whereas relief is needed to construct a freestanding automated teller machine, ATM, which requires the following. 1, variance from section 10.1530 to allow an ATM in a freestanding structure. Said property is located on Assessor Map 244, Lot 8, and lies within the Gateway Corridor District.
Good evening, Madam Chair and board members. My name is Keith Coven from Bowl Engineering, representing the owner, DFG LLC, and the applicant, NES Group. So as mentioned, we're just looking for relief from the variance request for a freestanding ATM. The reason why it can't be attached, which isn't allowed use, is because we're dealing with an existing building, and what we're trying to do is maintain the traffic patterns, the fire lane, and also the existing use inside the leased space. So we put we're proposing to put the ATM within a landscape island as close to the building as possible. Again, not in the travel lane, it's just going behind the existing curb. And actually are replicating that existing landscaping that we're taking away on the other side of the building. There's also to note, there's already an existing ATM for a different leasee in the building that's already there. So also to note on that, the reason why you can't attach, in that location, can't attach the ATM directly to the building is there's a glass, a glass facade there. So it's structurally unable to do. So we spoke with the applicant, asked if there's other locations that would work, and again, this is really the only location that would work on the site for the reasons I just mentioned.
Okay. Would you like to speak to the criteria?
Sure, I can run through each of those. The first one is the proposed project will not be contrary to public interest. The existing site contains one ATM, as I mentioned, so the addition of one will not add a new use to the lot. The spirit of the ordinance will be observed while the proposed ATM is detached. The proposed use is allowed per the zoning ordinance. Again, we're just talking about attached first, freestanding. Justice will be served due to the procedures in place. We're replacing an accessory use in the property which is permitted due to the principal use. We are adding an additional ATM which has a use that already exists on the site. Will we not be proposing a project that is contrary to public interest? As stated above, the project proposes a use which already exists on the site. Therefore, it is our belief that the surrounding property values will not be diminished by the addition of another ATM. The location of the proposed ATM is in close proximity to the existing building as it can be placed and faces inward within the gateway corridor and not towards residential uses. And the last one, little enforcement of the provision of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship. Proposed location of the drive-through ATM is the only place where the traffic patterns for the site would remain the same, and the entire redesign of the site layout would not be needed, as well as the only location it can be placed due to the location of the features of the existing building. To move it anywhere else would mean a complete redesign of the site, interference with the other companies that lease the buildings on the site, and cancellation of the project entirely. So in other words, there's really no other location that makes sense on the site for the purpose of, again, the way the site's laid out and also the existing interior uses.
Okay, other questions? Ms. Margison?
Question is, you have a current drive-through ATM. What would happen to that?
That stays. We're not removing the other ATM that's there.
Okay. And the zoning ordinances, we had a almost identical application to this a few years ago. The zoning ordinance is very clear that this is not allowed. Your hardship, you're saying, is that it would interfere with the design of the building and the other tenants of the building, correct?
Correct.
And what other hardship might you have for not being able to comply with the ordinance?
The only hardship was, again, you wouldn't allow the use, and they have the need for an additional ATM. So again, because we're dealing with an existing building, that's where we're kind of hamstrung on where we can locate it. So if we put it somewhere else, you're changing the whole traffic patterns. The hardship would be redesigning the site and making site improvements instead of just putting an existing small landscape island.
And there's no place that you can put it in the interior of the building, like where you swipe?
No, they want it exterior for it to be able to drive through. To
drive through?
Yeah, there's actually 2 lanes now, so it's using the already existing drive-through lane for the other one. So this is for drive-through purposes.
I'm a little confused. I thought this was people to walk up.
No, it's for drive.
But so you'll have 2 drive-through ATM accesses?
The other one is there's another bank in the facility. It's for someone else's ATM.
Okay.
So this is an ATM for this tenant. There's another ATM for a separate tenant.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So that there's actually 2 banks, or the other one might be a credit union, within this lease space. The current tenant that our applicant is working for does not have a drive-through ATM presently.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, is there anyone to speak in favor of this petition? Anyone to speak in opposition to this petition? Anyone to speak to, for, or against? Public hearing is closed. What would you like to do? Mr. Mattson.
I just want to, make a comment to the board is, I don't really have a problem with this application, but when considering the hardship criteria, one of the things we have to consider is, the literal enforcement of the, ordinance, section in question. And I guess it's not entirely clear to me why we don't allow freestanding ATMs.
That's an excellent question, but do you know why we don't allow it?
To be completely honest, that's not my area of expertise.
There's an ATM expert in the planning department.
My guess is it would have to do with traffic patterns
Yeah.
and their
That would be mine
impact,
too.
as well as it being an accessory structure. I'm just gonna leave it there.
Okay.
We had a similar application for the Portsmouth Green, but there was no principal structure. It was an ATM, and granted, every application is different, I understand that, but there was an ATM as an accessory use without a principal use. So it was a similar sort of application, but also different in that there was no bank attached to it. From what I understand about unattended electronic devices is that they generally want them covered and closed for safety of the pedestrians and also safety for bankers when they're using them for concerns about crime.
Okay.
So, but I don't know if that's, I mean.
Can I ask a question? May I ask a question?
You'd have to reopen the public hearing.
No, okay.
Don't want to?
That's it for now. Thank you. This has been quite a night. I guess one of my concerns is I don't have a good idea about a traffic pattern or if this is covered. I mean, we know that it's going to be landscaped and it will probably be attractive, but I'm not sure I get an idea of where it will be. And I know that's separate than if you decide, it's not allowed, it doesn't matter. But I'm not getting a full picture of what's being requested here, and I don't know if anyone else feels that way.
I did. I felt like this, as well as some of our other applications tonight, were a little skimpy on details, and there's no real rendering I found of exactly where this is, how it looks
I can't find
in
it.
place. I mean, the planning board does have to do an amended site plan for it, so I assume traffic patterns will be, any things associated with the site plan will be dealt with by the planning board. I did visit the site yesterday, and it's a very busy site. There's a lot of things there. Goodwill.
Yeah, it's very busy.
It's a very, very busy site. And yes, I don't think that there's renderings of how it will look.
Mr. Neese?
Ask a question of staff. Looking at the previous board actions, back in 2012, there was approval of a single lane, one lane drive-through facility. Does this application need a similar approval, or do they just tag along onto that previous approval?
Assuming that this proposed use is located on that single lane, it would be an add-on. And again, this would be reviewed or it would go through a site plan amendment. So there would be a review of the traffic pattern and any alterations as a result of this installation. Does that answer your question?
I think so. So you're saying that the variance requested for the other one, for the drive-through, could possibly apply to this one because it's on the same lane?
You would be adding to that and acknowledging that this would be added to that lane.
Right.
There's another freestanding.
This proposal doesn't request a variance for a drive-through lane, it's just for the ATM,
Correct.
because they don't need a variance for the drive-through lane?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
And it's more a pull alongside of, I think, than, like going under the building, isn't it? Yes.
I mean, I don't know how others are thinking, but again, this might be one where we would ask them to continue. I will say that I wouldn't probably support I do think that there's detail missing on this, exactly where it looks, what it looks like, where it is. However, I will be unlikely to support it because I think that this is the ATM provision in the ordinance is extremely detailed. And I do not, and I think any deviation from that, any variance for that really has to demonstrate real hardship, and I don't think that the applicant has demonstrated hardship. But I also understand that others may not feel the same way I do, and I don't know if, in the spirit of the night, if we want to ask them to come back and to provide more information, renderings, more information as to where it is. I don't know. And it really is the applicant's burden to have given us everything.
Would anyone like to make a motion one way or the other?
Anyone else?
I'll make a motion to approve the application as presented.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Okay. So going through the criteria, we'll take the first two together. The variance is not contrary to the public interest and the spirit of the ordinance is observed. This additional ATM to the site with a bank and another ATM on it would not alter the essential character of the neighborhood, threaten public health, safety, or welfare, or otherwise injure public rights. And this location of the ATM is as close to being attached as it could be, which would be the spirit of the ordinance. But because of the existing structure, and the location of the travel lane, it's just barely not attached. So it does not conflict with the implicit purpose of the ordinance. Substantial justice is done. The benefit to the applicant should not be outweighed by harm to the general public or to other individuals. And this applicant, the ATM is for another bank, so this applicant doesn't currently have an ATM, so that would be a benefit to the applicant, and I don't see that being outweighed by any harm to the general public. The values of surrounding properties are not diminished, and this there's no reason to believe that this would diminish the surrounding property values. And literal enforcement of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship. Unnecessary hardship means because of the special condition of the property that distinguish it from others in the area, there is no fair and substantial relationship between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property, and the proposed use is a reasonable one. And so the purpose of the ordinance provision in question, if this actually was attached to the building, there would be no request for a variance here, and this location is as close to being attached, but this is already an existing structure sited on the property where it is, and it's a glass facade, and the travel lane is where it is. So the fair and substantial relationship doesn't exist because this, again, this is about as close to being an attached ATM as could be. And then the proposed use is a reasonable one. It's a bank wanting an ATM that you can drive up to. That's reasonable.
Does the second have anything to add?
Yes. I think I want to add that based on the information presented and the fact that this is going for site plan review, whether or not the ATM in question satisfies the zoning ordinance requirements for a drive-through facility will be considered separately. And I think if you're amenable, our approval should be conditioned on that site plan review making that determination.
No,
Well,
or if they don't get it, they can't, if they don't
okay,
get
that's
that, they
fine.
can't have
I
it.
just want to clarify.
Right.
So one of the things, why don't we do this in discussion? I'll take that and I won't make any changes.
Okay. Is there any discussion?
Yes. So when you're talking about a standalone ATM, it is considered a drive-through facility under our zoning ordinance, which means it has to satisfy other criteria. I think this probably does because of the traffic pattern established and that there is another thing. But I just don't want to muddy the water by saying it's almost attached, because the moment it's not attached, it has to be this other thing. That's all. Just a minor zoning ordinance thing. But
It's not attached.
it's not attached. So it's like, I think Mr. Mattson's point is well taken, that it's very close to being attached. But because it's not, I don't want to muddy that water. That's all.
But I just want to clarify, it's not a drive-through, however.
It's a drive up.
It's a drive up.
Drive up.
It's a
It's a
drive
drive
up.
up. That's-
Right.
okay.
It's a drive up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the criteria, just to be clear, really relate to automobile access and not creating stuff beyond our consideration. So I think it satisfies the ordinance. I think we're fine. We can approve it as an accessory structure. It's just its proximity to the building doesn't change its essential character.
Is there any further discussion? You know, it's a drive-through, and this always gives us a lot of,
It's a drive up.
a drive up, I'm sorry, it's a drive up. It's an ATM. And if we are right in assuming that the reason that it is not in our ordinance is because it can create a traffic issue, I think we're covered on that by its next stop. And the fact that it is hard to see what harm it will do without, if the traffic is directed properly. On the other hand, and I really was almost persuaded by Mr. Mattson, but on the other hand, it isn't attached, and I'm not sure just how great a hardship it is. So I am unlikely to support the motion. Is there further discussion?
Just say that it just, to me, it's just a marked degree conflict with the ordinance. The ordinance is extremely specific, and that's why I'm not supporting it, because there's no, that and there's no hardship.
Okay. So a yes vote supports the ATM, and a no vote is a no vote. Ms. Record?
No.
Ms. Geffert?
Yep. Yes.
That's fine. Mr. Mantle?
No.
Ms. Margison?
No.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
Mr. Neese?
No.
And the chair says no.
Point of order, can we take another vote to deny?
We have to take another vote to deny. Would someone like to make such a motion? Ms. Margison?
I will move to deny the application on 2 grounds. The variance is not contrary to the public interest. The spirit of the ordinance is observed. The ordinance is extremely explicit about a prohibition of standalone ATMs, this application markedly conflicts with the zoning ordinance. And I also find that there is no hardship. Actually, we just have to,
one.
deny on 1 criteria, so that's 2.
Is there a second? Did we get that second? Okay, Mr. Mantle. All right. A yes, no denies the ATM. Yes, the motion is to deny the ATM. Ms. Record?
Yes.
Ms. Geffert?
No.
Mr. Mantle?
Yes.
Ms. Margison?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
No.
Mr. Neese?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So it is denied. And Mr. Rayum has re-entered. And and Ms. Gafford, you're the voter on this next one.
Yay, great.
It's my pleasure. Okay, let me bring us to the next.
It's the voter on the last application that gets the prize.
Oh, cheapers.
Okay. The next application, C, under new business, is the request of Cyrus Beer and Erica Beer, owners for property located at 64 Mount Vernon Street. Whereas relief is needed to demolish an existing detached shed and construct a new 2-story accessory detached shed, which requires the following. 1, a variance from section 10.573.20 to allow an accessory structure more than 10 feet in height and more than 100 square feet in area. A, to be set back 5 feet from the side property line where 10 feet is required, and B, to be set back 5 feet from the rear property line where 19 feet is required. Said property is located on Assessor Map 111, Lot 30, and lies within the General Residence B and Historic District. Is there anyone to speak to this petition?
Yes, good evening. Cyrus Beer, 64 Mount Vernon Street. So this is the existing shed on the right-hand side. My wife and I bought this house about 11 years ago, and that the shed has been there the whole time. We bought it with the shed there. The shed it's sitting on wood sills on the ground, which are rotting. Squirrels have gotten in there, and additionally, it is about 1 foot from the lot line. So from this picture, let's see, on the orange side there of the shed, we're facing Susan and John Henry, our neighbors, and their property line is basically right at the wall of the shed. So if we're going to do any work on that outside wall, we're basically standing in their flower bed in their yard to do it. From the rear setback, this is, if you continued up, that's the parking lot right out here.
Yeah.
If the smokestack there you might recognize is from the power plant. So the power plant for City Hall. So it's right here, very close by. Our proposal is to build what's on the left, which is to put a second floor on it, to put a foundation under it, and to move it in 5 feet from to give 5 feet from Susan and John Henry's yard, and also from the back. Let's see. Maybe I could go through the criteria. This will not be contrary to the public interest, we believe. Rebuilding the shed will not alter the characteristics of the neighborhood. Architecturally, the proposed shed will borrow design elements from our house and be appropriate to the neighborhood. Furthermore, as the shed is tucked away and fairly well hidden from any street, the impact will be minimal. I met with I had a work session with the HDC 2 weeks ago, and they were universally in support of it. So I think that contributes to what's alleged here is that it will improve the neighborhood. It will not threaten the health, safety, or welfare of the public. By bringing it in off the lot line, we'll be able to work on the shed without standing in our neighbor's yard. This will improve the welfare of the neighborhood. Safety will also be improved by giving additional distance as per fire code. I met recently with Shanti Wolf, who is the building inspector, and we could see their iron rods. And there was a survey that was done before we moved in, and so there's still iron rods in the ground that we could see. And he verified that the plans that we have would meet the fire code, whereas today it does not meet the fire code. We're too close to the lot line. 2, the spirit of the ordinance will be observed. We think the proposal is reasonable. many houses in the neighborhood have sheds. I think most of them do. The setback requirements are in that area. We're down here close to City Hall. Many of the houses do not have the full setbacks. And what I think what most importantly, what we're proposing is an improvement to what's there today. Substantial justice will be done. I think the proposal is reasonable. And there's no advantage to the public that outweighs the hardship to the owners by denying this request. The values of the surrounding properties will not be diminished. I think the HDC's support of the project supports our feeling that this is going to improve the neighborhood, not detract from it. We also our neighbor who's really affected here is Susan and John Henry, who live just south on Mount Vernon Street. And Susan wrote a letter to Isaac. I'm not sure, Stephanie, if that made its way to the board, but she wrote a letter in support of the project.
That may have been grouped in with the HDC
Okay.
comments.
Okay.
So it didn't make it here. But
Okay.
Thank you for.
Literal enforcement of the provision of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship. Because the proposed variance and setbacks would be an improvement over what exists today, because the new shed has a design that's in accordance with the style of the neighborhood, and because the use is not changing, a literal enforcement of the zoning provisions would result in an unnecessary hardship for the homeowners. Like I said, the existing shed is sitting on wood sills on the ground. It structurally, it's still sound, but its days are limited, so. That's it.
Okay, other questions?
Just
You threw me off. Other questions or questions?
Are there questions?
Oh, are there questions? Okay.
Sorry. Mr. Ram?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just trying to understand on page 82, just taking a look at the dimensions there for your setback. And so you have the 5 feet to the rear property line. That's pretty straightforward. 5 feet to the side property line. But you do kind of have this odd jog to your property here.
Yeah.
And it does look like the corner of your proposed shed is pretty close to that jog, i.e. where your neighbor's property. Do we know what that dimension is?
I don't actually.
Okay. And question for city staff, do they have to maintain 5 feet from that jog as well as part of their if we're saying that they're 5 feet set back, it should be to that whole property line, is that correct?
As advertised, yes.
Okay. I know it's a theme for tonight, but that's really my only concern. I guess my other question for you is why, again, the back property line, I don't think I have much concern about, but why did you not or unable to make that 10 feet away from? I understand you are improving the situation, but just asking why the additional 5 feet would be problematic for you.
Well, there's a hill that comes down there. So 5 feet would still can fit in without regrading, without digging into that hill.
Okay.
It also just takes away from that's sort of our space in our yard that we use. So right now we have a nice area in there. If we take away 5 feet, we feel like it's not detrimental, but 10 feet would take out, yeah.
Okay, so there may be some
Those two
topography reasons that are kind of driving some of your decision-making on how far back away from the property line you
Yes.
can move it. Okay, thank you.
Any other question?
I'm sorry, I do have
Oh,
one
I'm sorry.
additional
No,
one for
that's
cities.
absolutely-
No, my bad, Madam Chair. If I may,
Yes.
I just want to validate with city staff. The advertisement is for 19 feet on page 73, but the table that you have there shows the required is 25 feet. But that's the standard. The 19 feet is based off the height of the structure. Is that correct? 19 feet is the actual requirement.
Where are you seeing 19 feet?
Page 73, your table, existing and proposed conditions on the staff report.
Yep.
So rear yard shows permitted required 25 feet, but we are saying that the applicant only needs to meet 19 feet, which is the height of the structure, I'm presuming.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So it would, the correct setback would be 19 feet.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
May I
Unless you
ask-
have something else to say.
May I
Liz.
ask a question?
Yes.
If, the rear setback, behind that is a concrete wall and then a parking lot behind that. If we needed 5 feet from that jog, could we move back even a foot towards that rear and reduce that rear setback? Or would that be a new application?
You should probably go with what we have
Yeah,
tonight.
yeah, please.
I would say,
Yes. Can I just ask a question?
of course.
I was wondering, can you just go over one more time the hardship, and let me just frame it for you? So hardship is not that you comply with the fire code or whatever, it's that if we are not going to permit this use, that you're going to suffer a hardship on the land, which I'm asking for a little bit more. So, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a lead. You've said that this particular shed, the existing shed, is rotting, and that your use of the land requires a shed, if I'm hearing you correctly. And so it would be a hardship to lose the shed. You need to replace that use because that is part of how you own the property. And your proposal is a de minimis change from the existing shed and in fact improves the overall construction on the property in terms of the zoning ordinance.
Give me a kickback.
Yes,
Is that more or less correct?
yes. I think
Yeah.
you got it.
Thanks.
Are we all set?
I'm done now.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, can I ask one more question? You have a dog named Samson?
Yeah.
Ah, yes, hi. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
You may sit. Is there anyone in the public to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anyone to speak in opposition to this petition? Is there anyone to speak to, for, or against this petition? Okay.
Before you do that,
I know.
does anybody
And I
have
was
any
just
other
gonna say
questions for the
that.
applicant? No.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you. You took the words. No, that's fine. All right. It is back to us, board. What would you like to do? Ms. Morgeson?
I would like to make a motion to approve the variance request as presented and advertised, and if I get a second, I will.
Second.
Okay.
So I have to say, this has been a meeting with blow dryers and dogs named Samson. Going through our criteria request, the first two are taken together. The variance is not contrary to the public interest and the spirit of the ordinance is observed. And we require that the proposed use must not conflict with the explicit or implicit uses of the ordinance. And a couple of ways to figure that out also. It also must not alter the essential character of the neighborhood, threaten public health, safety, or welfare, or otherwise injure public rights. The public interest of this of the setback requirements for the left yard and the rear yard are the movement of light and air, while the applicant perhaps could have moved them more in off of the left and the rear yard. They have stated that there are topography reasons that make that difficult, and I will note that they are actually they're improving the setback requirements off of the existing use of the current shed. So I find that the spirit and intent of the ordinance is satisfied. Substantial justice is done, and here the ZBA has to find that the benefit to the applicant should not be outweighed by harm to the general public or to other individuals. I do not find that the general public really is injured by this variance request. This is a house on a dead-end lot, very irregularly configured in an area with a lot of irregularly configured lots, and I don't find that there's any harm to the general public by granting this variance. The value of surrounding properties are not diminished. Bringing this shed up to off of the setbacks, out of the setbacks as much as possible, and improving it will not harm property values in the area. And then the little enforcement of the ordinance will result in unnecessary hardship. And because of the special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, there is no fair and substantial relationship between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property. And the proposed use is a reasonable one, taking this from the last first. This is a reasonable accessory use. A shed is a reasonable accessory use to a house. And there are special conditions of this property. The topography of the property does slope upwards, making it the little enforcement of the property, of the ordinance requiring setbacks for the left and rear yards difficult to comply with. That is my motion.
Thank you. Ms. Geffert, do you have anything to add?
No, thank you.
All right, a motion has been made. Is there any discussion before we vote? Mr. Rayum?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. To me, I do see definite hardship with this property. It is severely burdened on the rear property line and really on its opposite side property line by the circa 1900 decision by the hospital to build like right up to the property line with a boiler house on one side and a hospital building on the other. So I really have no concerns with the rear property line. I am a little concerned with this jog, and I do think that the applicant probably needs to go back and work with their architect to just make certain. Obviously, these are not surveyed drawings, but there should be some understanding there of what that dimension is relative to where that jog is at, and work with their architect to figure that part out. But I agree with supporting this, and that will work itself out through the approval process with the city staff.
Would Mr. Rayum like to make that a stipulation, or is he?
Nope.
You're fine. Okay.
No, I have confidence that the process will work itself out.
Mr. Neese?
Allow me to ask a newbie question here. So if this is approved with a 5-foot setback, does that mean he has to be 5 feet from that little jog there as well?
Yes.
And so that's what we're saying. I just want to make sure that's clear, that he'll have to work through the permitting process to have 5 feet at that corner?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
That's a good newbie question.
it is. If there's no further discussion, we will vote. A yes vote grants the new shed garage. Ms. Geffert?
Yes.
Mr. Mantle?
Yes.
Ms. Margerson?
Yes.
Mr. Rayum?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
Mr. Neese?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. You are approved. Okay.
Can we take a break before the next application?
I think we're going to take a 7-minute break. You've been very patient. I'm sorry. But, okay, we're going to take a little break now.
Hammer it.
The request of Ryan Family Trust, owner, for property located at 199 McDonough Street, whereas relief is needed to construct an addition to the existing primary residential structure, which requires the following. 1, variance from section 10.521 to allow a 9.5-foot rear yard where 20 feet is required. 2, variance from section 10.516.20 to allow a 9.5-foot rear yard where 15 feet is required for a rear yard adjoining a railroad right-of-way. And 3, variance from section 10.321 to allow a nonconforming structure or building to be extended, reconstructed, or enlarged without conforming to the requirements of the ordinance. Said property is located on Assessor Map 144, Lot 42, and lies within the general residence district. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Board. My name's Peter Ryan, owner of the property 199 McDonough Street. Our application is for the approval of a 9x9 extension of an existing addition to the backside of the home. The addition would not be visible from McDonough Street, which is the front of the home. The project has the following benefits. The addition is less non-conforming than the existing structure, creates one for a living for my wife and I in our retirement. The addition is to be utilized as a master bedroom and a laundry room. Materials to be used will match the existing house. Variance criteria. The variance is not contrary to the public interest. The spirit of the variance is observed. Location is not on the street frontage, which does not create a distraction, and architecturally kept the same. Size of addition squares off the back of the house to give it a more uniform look. Substantial justice is done. There is no harm to the general public that would be created by this installation. The addition's square footage increases the property value, which would help the values of properties around us. The benefit to the other properties would be their values would be increased, hopefully, by the addition of our value. Literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would not result in an unnecessary hardship. We are proposing to make a more comfortable living arrangement for ourselves with this addition of a master bedroom, closet, and laundry room. The existing bathroom and laundry room is extremely small as it stands right now, and the additional room would help my wife and I live in retirement with basically a utile bathroom and laundry room. Create an additional 81 square foot valuable space to the existing 1,500 square feet. This is the only space available for the addition for one floor living in the house. Thank you.
Okay. Questions? Yes, Ms. Murchison.
I have a couple questions. So you have a door, an existing door. How will you still have access to the porch after you put the addition on?
Well, the plan is, can I walk over to the?
You may, if you bring the mic, yes.
Okay.
And just don't touch the screen.
Okay.
But do not.
Very,
This work?
do not touch
The
this.
mic,
I won't-
don't touch the screen.
I won't touch the screen. The existing door is right here. Our proposal is to move this door to here to access the backyard for our dog. So this would be closed, opened up. The main house, the bathroom currently exists right here with the laundry room, very tiny. This is the kitchen. So we would put in a master bedroom, closet, bathroom, and laundry room in this area and make this our bedroom for the future.
So you would cut off access to the porch from that part of the house?
Well,
You won't put a new door
right,
on?
from that, yeah, we would have no access from there.
Okay.
Correct.
I just have one more question. This could be a question for staff, but the rear yard setback is going from 8 to 9.5. Given that the porch is not moving, why is there more of a setback?
The lot goes away.
Yeah.
Lot's angled away.
I think think that had to do with, actually, give me 1 second.
A lot angles away.
The lot angles away, yeah, so I believe it's the closest corner over here is 8 feet. But where the actual addition is going, it will be 9.5, which is still non-conforming. The deck doesn't factor into that because the deck is below 18 inches, and so it doesn't count as a rear yard. What's the word I'm looking for? Structure.
Yeah.
Oh, so the porch is not the structure, and I guess I still don't understand how,
Setback is based on an average, right?
They're currently measured from here, that doesn't count.
oh, okay, all
And
right,
when that counts, the lot line's farther back.
Yeah,
okay,
okay.
okay, thank you.
Are there other questions? Other questions? Yes, Mr. Ram.
Yeah, I guess following up on Ms. Marston's question, I just want to make sure your drawing does not show the actual setback for your addition. So it's 7 feet shown dimension to the edge of your below 18-inch porch. Are you attesting that it is 2.5 feet, i.e. 7 feet plus 2.5 feet equals 9.5 feet to get to the addition that you're proposing at that corner?
It
Yes.
shows, yeah.
Okay.
All set?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, if there are no further questions, and if you have
Oh, I
none.
just have one more
I'm
question.
sorry, Ms. March.
So there, along the back of your property, you have an existing fence, the vinyl fence?
Correct.
Okay. It just, this is the first time I on this board have had a application that involves railroad property, so something that I want to be cognizant of. So, all right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, is there anyone in public to speak in favor of the application?
There we go.
Long time coming, huh?
I know. Good evening, Elizabeth Bratter, property owner, 159 McDonough Street. I would like to speak in favor of this 199 Street's 9x9 addition plus however height there is in the rear of the lot. The request of these variances will not be contrary to public interests. Section 10.521 states the minimum yard in GRC is 20 feet. It is proposed to be 9.5. They are not rebuilding the entire house. We're attempting to do so would mean it would be helpful to create the setback. MapGeo shows that the house itself, actually, the MapGeo shows that the houses all along this end of McDonough Street, most of them do not meet the 20-foot rear setback. Section 10.516.20, where the setback to the railroad is a minimum of 15 feet and 9.5 is requested, looking again at MapGeo, and the plans provided to the house itself, 9.5. The house itself is 9.5 or less to the railroad as it sits now without the addition. The addition would not change that railroad setback. Section 10.321, the proposal is to enlarge a non-conforming structure. This addition will not change anything for the abutters or the neighborhood. The majority of homes in this neighborhood are non-conforming. When they are completely replaced, it makes sense to try to make them less conforming. But in this case, this house, along with the back deck that's already there, the whole thing is really non-conforming. The spirit of the ordinance is observed because ordinances were created long after this house was built. This house was in the same family for many, many years. I lived there 35 years, and I've owned the house for 41 years that we have. So that neighbor, they were there when we got there, and they were there for a few years after we left. Substantial justice will be done by allowing them to square off the house. Most of the rooms in this house are rather small, and they have some very steep steps to get to the bedrooms that are upstairs. The addition will likely create more usable space without having to alter the main parts of the structure of this house. The value to surrounding properties will not be diminished. The house on the left side probably won't even be able to see the change, and the house on the right side is so very nonconforming. It has other issues as well, that the last time it came before the board, it was set to be completely rebuilt and moved. Literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance will result in an unnecessary hardship. It is difficult to make any positive improvements to any of the older houses in Portsmouth due to the fact of most of them being so nonconforming to start with. This home has an interesting room system due to the fact that there was a family of 5 who lived there for many years, and they seem to have created rooms to accommodate all of the people who lived there as they got older. Not allowing this simple change would likely create a hardship requiring major alterations to the upper rooms and to the structure itself. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
welcome to all the new board members.
Anyone to speak in opposition? To, for, or against? Okay. If we've all said our piece, the public hearing is closed. Discussion, emotion? Really, people?
I made one. Who was sitting
Yeah,
on?
I'm out.
Okay.
Yeah, yes, they knew that.
Okay. Sorry.
Motion?
You're going to force
Come on now, go ahead, go for it.
Make a motion. Make a motion to approve the request for variances as advertised.
Is there a second? to that?
Second.
Okay.
See if I can do this. To justify the motion, I don't think this variance is contrary to the public interest. It does not conflict with any of the purposes of the ordinance. There is no evidence that there's going to be any adverse impact on the health, safety, or welfare of the public that can be demonstrated by this. I think there will, as far as substantial justice, it will benefit the applicant. I don't see any harm to the public that it's going to cause. This is an unusual neighborhood in the size of the lots and the location, and so, this is, as has been pointed out, many of the changes are not even going to be visible from the street and possibly not even visible to the neighbors. So I don't see any harm so that substantial justice will be met. There's no indication that the value of surrounding properties will be diminished by this. I think that there are a lot of special conditions, and literal enforcement of the ordinance will result in unnecessary hardship. This is an unusual lot. If you were to actually insist on enforcing all of the setbacks, this 35-foot deep lot would have, well, not very much. I think 15 feet in the middle that you could possibly build on. And so there are certainly special conditions which limit the ability. The proposal is making a relatively minor change to the property, and I think that the conditions of the lot impose a hardship, and there's no real reasonable reason to disapprove this. It would create an unnecessary hardship for the owner.
Thank you. Does the second have anything to add?
Yes, I agree with everything Mr. Neese explained. The lot is the hardship. I mean, this lot is basically slightly bigger than any house lot in the south end. And when considering variances, the lot size, especially in a dense neighborhood like this, always presents the hardship.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further discussion on the motions? Mr. Ram?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I agree with the motion and will support it. Just a little bit more info. Certainly the fact that this, the back setback is up against an open area which consists of a railroad right of way, and then more open area behind that, I think is also a hardship associated with this property. It's a unique characteristic of it. We're generally concerned about light and air to neighboring properties. In this case, there's really no concern there. Additionally, the applicant's proposal for a small one-story addition is very modest and in keeping with that. And then the other part is this 15-foot setback from a railroad right-of-way. I've yet to figure out exactly why our ordinance includes that requirement. The board ran into it as well when the applications for some of the now ongoing construction that's taking place next to the parking garage further down in the Bridge Street area. Those properties also came before this board looking for relief from that 15-foot requirement, and we did grant it. Again, the rationale for it doesn't make much sense in terms of what it's buying for the property. It's certainly not going to protect you if there is a train accident of some sort. So with that, I think it's a kind of a nebulous requirement, and I'm in favor of not necessarily considering that to be a negative for the application here.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, then we will take a vote. A yes vote approves the addition. Ms. Record?
Yes.
Mr. Mantle?
Yes.
Ms. Margison?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
Mr. Neese?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, and you are approved, and thank you for waiting so long. Okay.
Madam Chairman?
Yes, I know what you're going to say. Please say it.
Only if you use your hammer correctly. Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.